Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love Tasty Tuesdays, all about cooking, all about nutrition, and all about you. If there's something you'd like to see on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at info@invisiblefitness.com. Enjoy the show. Today's show, roasted chestnut soup. I wanted to scramble and bring this video to you as soon as possible since it's that time of year where chestnuts are being used in recipes. I personally only use chestnuts in one recipe for Thanksgiving that I learned from my mother for a very traditional ethnic kind of rice stuffing that we have at Thanksgiving time. So when I had this soup at an event up in wine country last weekend, at first I didn't know what it was, and then the chef came over and he said, "Have you ever had roasted chestnut soup before?" And my eyes lit up because I said, "That's what this is? It's so amazing." And I literally had 2 servings of it. They were little servings. And then of course I asked him, I said, "I have a show. Can I please feature this recipe on the show? I'd love to share it with people." And here's why. Chef Charlie told me what's in this recipe, and I definitely think you want to connect with him on Facebook. He's got some recipes there too. Atascadero Catering is where you can find him to hire him for events. So Chef Charlie, thank you again for letting me share this recipe with my audience. Why I love this roasted chestnut soup is for a couple different reasons. It tastes a little bit, if you don't know what it is, like gravy. And that's the first thing I thought about. So this recipe can be made into a vegan gravy that you can put on mashed potatoes or in anything that you want to. Dip it with bread. But I'm gonna use chicken stock because that's what he used and that's what I'm gonna prefer. But if you use vegetable stock, you instantly transform this dish, which is super easy, into a vegan dish that can give you that meaty flavor that you might miss without the meat. So let's get started. So we're gonna base this recipe on 1 pound of chestnuts. And if you wanna make more, then you're gonna take the recipe and double or triple it based on how many chestnuts you want to use. Chestnuts usually come as a regular nut with the shell on them, and they're going to need to be roasted. That is one way that you can buy them. And if you can only find them this way, I will show you how to do it. We actually have some in the oven right now. That will take a little bit more time, and if you don't mind the time, there's only 3 or 4 ingredients in this recipe, so it's really easy. However, if you want it really, really simple and fast, you can get already peeled, already cooked chestnuts and just take them out of the package. Both Trader Joe's has both of these, and I'm sure other grocery stores do too, but this is only a little over 1/2 pound, so I'm gonna have to add some of the roasted chestnuts we're working on right now to make this dish. So to roast a chestnut, you're gonna take the flatter part of the chestnut and you're going to, with a knife or a sharp object, cut a X into the chestnut before you put it in the oven. And you're gonna roast it on 400 for 15 to 20 minutes. So we have some in the oven right now. And as you can see, as they roast, they're gonna split open even more, making it easier to peel, but they're really hot. So first, I'm gonna open up my prepackaged, already cooked, already peeled chestnuts, which are super easy. And again, if that's what you're gonna use, just get 2 packages to start. And you're gonna dump them right into the pot. If you're using roasted chestnuts that you're roasting yourself, once they cool, you're going to peel the skin off of them and put them in the pot. So you'll do this with each one of the chestnuts until you have the whole pound in the pot. So once you have your pound of chestnuts in the pot, we're gonna add 3 cups of chicken broth. Now I normally make my own chicken broth, but I'm out because I've been cooking a lot. So we're gonna use Trader Joe's organic low sodium chicken broth. And I would recommend low sodium anyway for both if you're gonna buy your own broth, but really making it's really easy. All you need to do once you roast a chicken, which we've already done in the show, so find a Tasty Tuesday where we roasted the chicken. After you take all the meat off the chicken, you're gonna take the whole carcass, all the bones, stick it in a pot, fill it with water, and boil it. And the longer you boil it, the more minerals come out of the bones. It's actually called mineral broth, and it's really good for rebuilding cartilage and for helping with bone density. So just cook that chicken bones down. You can put the skins in there. If you had any flavors or seasonings on there, leave them there and just cook it down. And then once it cools, you strain it and store it. I freeze mine and put them in the refrigerator in the garage or in the freezer and then use it when necessary. But like I said, I'm out. So we're not gonna do a show on how to make your own chicken broth because it's super easy. Just put it in a pot, fill it with water, let it boil down. I'd say about 3 hours would be a good place to start. If you want true bone broth, you're gonna need to cook it maybe in a crock pot for about 8 hours. So we're gonna turn our burner on medium and we're gonna cook down the chestnuts until they're really soft, which is gonna take about 20 to 30 minutes. In the meantime, we're gonna add some fresh cut sage. Now for this 1 pound of chestnuts to 3 cups of chicken broth, and again, if you wanna make this a vegan gravy, just use vegetable broth. I'm gonna cut up a few leaves of sage. I'm probably only gonna do this much for now because I'm gonna wait to taste it and see how much more that I need. So once you get your chestnuts nice and soft from cooking them down about 20 to 30 minutes on medium, I'm gonna shut the burner off and I'm gonna add a non-dairy creamer. Basically, I'm gonna add full-fat coconut cream. Now, if you're using like an almond milk or a coconut milk, it might not be thick enough to really make it creamy. So I'm gonna recommend that you use extra thick and rich coconut cream. And you're not going to use the whole thing. Chef Charlie told me that it was for 1 pound of chestnuts, 3 cups of chicken broth, and 1 cup of cream. So if you're not dairy-free and you want to use cream, then go ahead and use cream. But we're dairy-free on this show, so we don't use cream. But we do support those who do and tell you how to make it best. So when I open up a coconut cream, I usually don't use the whole thing. Now in the mushroom soup that we've made, I'm going to do that. But for this soup, I'm gonna just take a scoop out of the container that I have in the refrigerator when I store it. So as you can see, it's really nice and thick. So I'm gonna take what's left in this container and put it into my chestnut soup. I'm gonna stir it around to see if, and I'm gonna guess that that was about 1/3 of a cup. Between 1/3 and 1/4 of a cup. And actually I think it looks perfect. I think that's just enough that's in there. Next, I'm gonna blend this down to make it nice and creamy. My preference for ease is to blend in the pot, but I don't know that this recipe is deep enough for me to blend successfully in the pot. Let's see. It wasn't yesterday. So you want to make sure that your burner's off before your cord is hanging there. Yes, I know, that's a danger. Now I'm going to stick my Cuisinart blending stick. There are all kinds of blending sticks. This is the one I use. I'm going to put it in my pot and... I'm going to blend this down, puree it until it's nice and smooth. Once you've blended down your chestnut soup and checked out its consistency, if you've put too much of your coconut cream in there, then you can let it cook down a little bit more to thicken it up. I think this was perfect. So about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of coconut cream for the 3 cups of chicken broth and the 1 pound of chestnuts was perfect. Now I did add a little bit more sage. I did taste it. And you're gonna start by adding about a teaspoon of salt. The finer the salt is, the smaller the granules, the more salty it tastes. Like the bigger, thicker pieces are going to not be as salty. And so I've gotten used to the difference between the two. So I started out with about a teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt. Pink Himalayan salt has a really unique flavor. I love it, and it's got about 84 minerals and trace elements in it, so it actually is better quality salt for your body than, you know, the kind that you get at the store that's really bleached down to white fine crystals. So look for a high mineral salt to use. Not only will it taste better, but it'll be better for you. And then Chef Charlie told me that he used white pepper in the recipe, which I agree probably would be great and better, and I tasted his and it was amazing. But I don't have white pepper, so I'm gonna use just regular crushed black pepper, and I used about a teaspoon of that as well. I stirred it up. You want it salt to taste. Taste it and see if you like it. If you do, then you're done. And if you don't, then keep playing with the spices until you do. And if you need to cook it down a little bit more, do that. And the other thing I'm going to mention is that if you, because yesterday I made this to test it out before we filmed today, and I wanted to blend it with the blending stick, but for some reason there wasn't enough in the pot, so it splattered everywhere. So the next choice, if that happens to you, if it's not deep enough, if you're not going to make more than the 1 pound of chestnuts, is to use your Vitamixer or your Magic Bullet or your NutriBullet and blend it. So just transfer it all back into whatever unit you're using and then blend it, and it'll come out just as creamy.
The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly video casts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If the show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT, the number 2, LOVE.tv. Have a fit and fabulous day.